The research ship U's Horizon moved slowly through space near the Kepler 442 star system. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge, watching the stars through the big window. His crew had been exploring this part of space for 3 months. They were looking for new planets and new forms of life. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been flying ships in space for 20 years. He loved his job, but space could be dangerous. Today felt different somehow. Something was coming. Dr. Lisa Bennett worked in her lab below the bridge. She studied alien life forms. Lisa had short brown hair and wore thick glasses. She was very smart and spoke 5 different alien languages. Right now she was reading reports about this star system. Everything seemed normal and quiet. The ship's radio officer, Dan Parker, sat at his station listening to space signals. Dan was young, maybe 25 years old. He had good ears for picking up strange sounds from space. Most of the time, he only heard the normal noise that stars and planets make. But today, something was different. At exactly 14:30 ship time, Dan's equipment started making loud noises. Strange signals were coming from somewhere in the star system. Dan put on his headphones and listened carefully. The signals sounded like voices, but not human voices. "Captain Morrison," Dan called out, "I'm getting something weird on the radio. It sounds like alien voices, and they seem scared." Jake walked over to Dan's station. The whole bridge crew gathered around to listen. The voices were high and musical, but there was fear in them. Even though they could not understand the words, everyone could hear the terror. "Can you figure out where it's coming from?" Jake asked. Dan worked with his equipment for several minutes. "It's coming from the 3rd planet in this system. And Captain, there are a lot of voices. This isn't just 1 or 2 aliens. This sounds like thousands of them." Jake made a quick decision. "Change our course toward that planet, but keep us hidden, behind the moons. I want to know what's happening before we show ourselves." Dr. Bennett ran up to the bridge with her computer. "Captain, I've been working on these signals. I think I can translate some of the words. These aliens call themselves Zephyrians. They're trying to send out a call for help." The ship moved closer to the planet. Through their telescopes, they could see it was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green land, but something was wrong. There were thousands of ships leaving the planet's surface. The ships looked damaged and moved like they were running from something terrible. Lisa worked hard to understand more of the alien language. After 2 hours, she had figured out enough words to understand the basic message. What she learned made her hands shake. "Captain," she said quietly, "these Zephyrians are running from something they call the Devourers. According to their messages, these Devourers have been hunting them for hundreds of years. They eat fear itself and have destroyed dozens of other alien civilizations." Jake felt cold inside. In all his years in space, he had never heard of anything like this. "Are you sure about this translation?" "I'm sure," Lisa said. "The Zephyrians are peaceful traders who never fought wars. They tried to run and hide, but the Devourers always find them. The Zephyrians say that no one has ever fought the Devourers and lived." More messages came through the radio. Dan could hear the panic getting worse. "Captain, they're saying the Devourers are coming back. The Zephyrian ships are trying to escape, but some of them are too damaged to fly fast." Through their telescopes, they watched several Zephyrian ships fall behind the others. These ships sent out desperate calls for help, but the other ships could not stop. If they stopped, the Devourers would catch them all. "We have to help them," said Commander Alex Hayes. Alex was Jake's second in command. He was a strong man who believed in doing the right thing, even when it was dangerous. "Alex, we don't know anything about these Devourers," Jake said. "What if we can't fight them either?" Chief Engineer Katie Walsh spoke up from her station. "Captain, I've been listening to these alien messages. The Zephyrians have better technology than us. Their ships are faster and stronger than ours. If they can't fight these devourers, what chance do we have?" Jake looked around at his crew. There were only 43 humans on the horizon. They had some weapons, but nothing special. Their ship was built for research, not for fighting wars. But those Zephyrian ships were falling behind. Soon the devourers would catch them. Jake thought about all the innocent aliens who would die if nobody helped them. Navigator Sam Rodriguez checked their position. "Captain, if we're going to do something, we need to decide now. Those damaged ships won't last much longer." Jake made the decision that would change everything. "All right, people, we're going to help them. Katie, give me everything our engines can handle. Sam, plot a course to those damaged ships. Dan, try to contact the Zephyrians and tell them help is coming." Dr. Bennett looked worried. "Captain, what if the Devourers are as dangerous as the Zephyrians say? What if we're flying into something we can't handle?" Jake stood up straight and looked at his crew. "Then we'll find out what humans are really made of. We've never backed down from a fight when innocent people needed help. We're not going to start now." The horizon changed course and headed toward the damaged Zephyrian ships. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness of space, something ancient and terrible was coming. Something that had never been challenged by any species in the galaxy. Something that was about to learn what happened when it tried to hunt humans. The horizon reached the damaged Zephyrian ships just as the first one started to break apart. Captain Jake Morrison watched through the main screen as pieces of alien metal floated away into space. There were still living beings on that ship. "Katie, get us close enough to use our rescue equipment," Jake ordered. "Dan, keep trying to talk to them." Chief Engineer Katie Walsh pushed their engines harder than ever before. The horizon shook as it moved fast through space. Dan Parker finally got a clear signal to the Zephyrian ships. "Captain, I'm talking to someone," Dan said. "His name is Kethfer. He says he's some kind of leader. He wants to know why we're here." "Tell him we're here to help," Jake said. Dan translated the message. A few seconds later, he looked confused. "Captain, Kethfer says we should run away. He says the Devourers will be here soon, and they will kill us all. Ask him how much time we have." Jake said. Dan spoke into his radio and waited for an answer. "He says maybe 1 hour, maybe less." Dr. Lisa Bennett had been listening to all the Zephyrian radio signals. She had learned much more of their language in the past few hours. What she discovered made her very afraid. "Captain, I need to tell you something important," Lisa said. "The Devourers are not like any enemy we've ever heard of. They don't just kill people. They eat fear itself. They make their victims so scared that they can't move or think. Then they feed on that fear." Jake felt his stomach get tight. "What do you mean they eat fear?" "According to the Zephyrian records, the Devourers are very old. They might be millions of years old. They exist partly in our world and partly in some other place. They can make people see terrible things that aren't really there. They can make people remember their worst fears and make those fears seem real." Commander Alex Hayes had been listening quietly. "How do they do this?" Lisa looked at her computer screen. "The Zephyrians say the Devourers can get inside people's minds. They find whatever scares a person the most and make it 100 times worse. Most people become so afraid they can't even run away. They just stand there and wait to die." "That's impossible," Katie said from her engineering station. "Fear is just a feeling. You can't eat feelings." "That's what I thought too," Lisa said. "But the Zephyrians have records going back thousands of years. They've met survivors from other worlds. Every story is the same. The devourers come. They make people terrified, and then they feed on that terror. The victims just disappear. The rescue work continued. The Horizon used its equipment to pull Zephyrian survivors from the damaged ships. Each ship held about 50 aliens. They looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. They moved with grace, but now they moved with fear. Elder Kethfer came aboard the Horizon. He was very old, even for a Zephyrian. His blue skin had silver marks. That showed his age. He spoke to Dr. Bennett in his musical language. What is he saying? Jake asked. Lisa translated. He's thanking us for saving them, but he's also warning us. He says the Devourers have been hunting his people for 300 years. His people used to have a great civilization, with billions of Zephyrians living on dozens of worlds. Now, there are only a few thousand left. Kethfer spoke again, pointing at the humans around him. He says we seem very brave, but bravery won't help us against the Devourers. He says they have seen the bravest warriors in the galaxy become so afraid they couldn't even scream. Navigator Sam Rodriguez had been checking their position. Captain, we've got all the survivors we can save, but our sensors are picking up something strange. There are energy readings coming from the edge of the system. Something big is coming. Jake looked at his crew. They were all good people who had signed up to explore space and make friends with alien species. They had not signed up to fight monsters that ate fear. Kethfer, Jake said, and Dr. Bennett translated. Tell us everything you know about how the Devourers fight. The old Zephyrian's large eyes became sad. Through Lisa, he began to tell them the terrible truth. The Devourers don't use weapons like guns or missiles. They use fear itself as their weapon. First, the area around them becomes very cold. Then reality starts to change. You see things that aren't there. You hear voices of people you love calling for help, but it's really the Devourers making those sounds. Jake listened carefully. This was unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. Then comes the worst part, Kethfer continued. They get inside your mind. They make you remember every bad thing that ever happened to you. Every time you were scared, every time you failed, every time you felt helpless. But they make those memories 1,000 times worse than they really were. Katie Walsh looked confused. But that still doesn't explain how they eat fear. Kethfer spoke again. Lisa translated. He says that when a person becomes completely terrified, they give off a special kind of energy. The Devourers feed on this energy. The more afraid someone is, the stronger the Devourers become. What happens to the people they feed on? Alex asked. They disappear, Lisa said after talking to Kethfer. Not just their bodies. Everything that made them who they were just stops existing. It's like they were never born at all. The bridge became very quiet. Everyone was thinking about what they had just learned. Has anyone ever fought them successfully? Jake asked. Kethfer shook his head sadly. He says no. Every species that has tried to fight the Devourers has been destroyed. Some had better technology than others. Some were physically stronger. Some were smarter. None of that mattered. The Devourers always win because they turn a species' own fear against them. Sam Rodriguez looked up from his navigation station. Captain, those energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever's coming, it's moving fast. We have maybe 30 minutes. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all brave people, but he could see fear starting to show in their faces. Learning about the Devourers was bad enough. Actually facing them would be much worse. All right. People, Jake said, we have a choice to make. We can try to run with the Zephyrians and hope we're fast enough to get away. Or we can stay and fight something that has never been defeated. What do you think we should do, Captain? Katie asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about all the innocent Zephyrians who had died over the centuries. He thought about the other species that had been destroyed by the Devourers. He thought about what would happen if these creatures ever found Earth. "I think," Jake said slowly, "that it's time someone showed these Devourers what happens when they try to hunt humans." The Devourers came just as the ship's morning shift began. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee on the bridge when reality started to break apart around them. At first, it was just the temperature. The bridge became so cold that people could see their breath. The lights started to flicker, even though Chief Engineer Katie Walsh said all the power systems were working perfectly. "Captain," Navigator Sam Rodriguez called out, his voice shaky, "our sensors are going crazy. There are ships out there, but they're not showing up the way ships should. It's like they're only half real." Through the main screen, they could see space itself starting to bend and twist. Dark shapes moved between the stars, but when someone tried to look directly at them, the shapes seemed to disappear. Dr. Lisa Bennett was in her lab when the first wave of fear hit the ship. She was working on translating more Zephyrian records when suddenly she felt like something terrible was watching her. The feeling was so strong that she dropped her computer and looked around the room. Nothing was there, but the feeling got worse. Lisa remembered being 5 years old and afraid of the dark. She remembered thinking there were monsters hiding under her bed. But this was 1,000 times worse than any childhood fear. On the bridge, Dan Parker was trying to keep the radio working when he heard voices. They sounded like his mother calling for help, but his mother had died 3 years ago. The voices seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Don, help me," the voice said. "I'm lost and scared. Why didn't you save me?" Dan knew it wasn't real, but the voice sounded exactly like his mother. Tears started running down his face, even though he knew the Devourers were making these sounds. Elder Kethver had warned them this would happen. The Zephyrian leader sat in the corner of the bridge, his blue skin now pale with fear. He had experienced Devourer attacks before and survived, but barely. "It begins," Kethver whispered to Dr. Bennett through their translation device. "Soon, the real terror starts." Commander Alex Hayes felt his worst memories coming back. He remembered the day his younger brother died in an accident. Alex had been supposed to watch him, but he had been busy with other things. The guilt had eaten at him for years. Now the Devourers were making him feel that guilt again, but much stronger. In the engine room, Katie Walsh was fighting to keep their power systems running when she started seeing things. The room filled with smoke that wasn't really there. She heard explosions from the engine accident that had almost killed her when she was a young engineer. Her hands started shaking so badly she could barely work. But something strange was happening. Unlike the Zephyrians, the humans were not freezing up with fear. Yes, they were afraid. The terror was real and stronger than anything they had ever felt. But instead of becoming paralyzed, something else was happening inside their minds. Jake Morrison felt the fear washing over him like a cold wave. He saw images of every time he had failed as a captain, every crew member he had lost, every decision that had gone wrong. But beneath the fear, something else was growing, something hot and angry. "Not today," Jake said quietly. Then louder, "Not today." The fear was still there, but Jake was using it. His mind became sharper, his thinking clearer. Years of training kicked in. He had been in dangerous situations before. He had learned that fear could make a person stronger if they knew how to use it. "Katie," he called to the engine room, "give me everything we've got. I want all weapons powered up." Katie was seeing terrible things that weren't real, but she heard the captain's voice. She had work to do. The fear was making her hands shake, but it was also making her think faster. She began pushing their systems harder than ever before. "Weapons are online, Captain," she called back. "But I don't know if our guns can hurt something that's not completely real." Dr. Bennett was in her lab, trying to work even though she kept seeing horrible images from her past. But her scientific mind was still working. She was studying the energy readings from the Devourer ships. "Captain," she called over the communication system, "I'm reading something strange. The Devourer's energy signatures are changing. It's like they're confused about something." On the bridge, Sam Rodriguez was fighting his own fears while trying to keep the ship positioned correctly. He kept seeing images of every time he had gotten lost, every time his navigation had been wrong. But the fear was making him focus harder on his instruments. "Captain, the Devourer ships are moving closer, but they're moving slowly. It's like they're being careful." Dan Parker was still hearing his mother's voice, but he was also picking up other signals. "Captain, I'm getting readings from the Devourer ships. They're communicating with each other, and they sound surprised." Elder Cuthfer watched the human crew with amazement. In all his long life, he had never seen anyone react to a Devourer attack this way. The humans were afraid, yes, but they were still working. They were still fighting. "Impossible," he whispered. Jake Morrison stood up from his captain's chair. The fear was still there, stronger than ever. But he had been afraid before. He had been afraid when pirates attacked his first ship. He had been afraid when solar flares nearly killed his crew. He had been afraid when he had to make life or death decisions. But fear had never stopped him before, and it wasn't going to stop him now. "Alex, target the nearest Devourer ship," Jake ordered. "All weapons." "Captain," Alex said, his voice steady. Despite the terror in his eyes, weapons locked on target. The Devourers had never experienced anything like this. For millions of years, they had hunted by making their prey so afraid that they couldn't fight back. But these humans were using their fear as fuel. The more afraid they became, the more dangerous they got. Dr. Bennett made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain, the Devourers are afraid. Their energy readings show they're experiencing fear for the first time. They don't know how to handle it." Jake smiled, even though terrible images were still filling his mind. "So they can dish it out, but they can't take it." "Fire all weapons," Jake ordered. The Horizon's weapons lit up space. Energy beams shot out toward the shadow ships of the Devourers. The beams hit their targets, and for the first time in millions of years, the Devourers felt pain. The shadow ships started to retreat, their forms becoming less solid. The terrible cold on the bridge began to warm up. The flickering lights became steady again. "They're running away," Sam said with disbelief. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Devourers had been surprised, but they would be back. And next time, they would be ready for humans who fought back. "Don't celebrate yet," Jake said. "This was just the first round. They'll be back, and they'll be angry." Elder Cuthfer looked at the human crew with new respect. For the first time in 300 years, he had seen the Devourers retreat. It should have been impossible, but these humans had done it. How? He asked Dr. Bennett. "How did you fight the fear?" Lisa smiled, even though she was still shaking from the attack. "We didn't fight the fear. We used it. Fear makes humans dangerous. The more afraid we get, the harder we fight." In the darkness of space, the Devourers regrouped. They had never experienced defeat before. They had never felt fear before. But they were learning, and they would be back. The hunt was just beginning. The Devourers came back 3 hours later, and this time they were angry. Captain Jake Morrison felt them coming before the sensors picked them up. The air on the bridge got thick and heavy. Everyone started feeling watched, like invisible eyes were staring at them from the shadows. "Here we go again," Jake said to his crew. "Remember what we learned last time. The fear is real, but we can use it." Chief Engineer Katie Walsh was ready this time. She had spent the last 3 hours preparing their ship for another attack. All the power systems were running at maximum. All the weapons were charged and ready. "Captain, I've got an idea," Katie said over the communication system. "What if we don't just defend ourselves? What if we attack them with their own method?" "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "The Devourers use fear as a weapon, but they've never felt fear themselves until today. What if we can make them more afraid?" Dr. Lisa Bennett had been studying the energy readings from the first attack. She had discovered something important about how the Devourers worked. "Katie's right," Lisa said. "The Devourers exist partly in our reality and partly in some other place. But when they attack, they have to come fully into our reality. That makes them vulnerable." The shadow ships appeared again, but this time there were more of them. The Devourers had called for help. Space around the horizon filled with dark shapes that hurt to look at directly. The psychic attack began immediately. Wave after wave of pure terror washed over the ship. This time, the Devourers were trying much harder to break the human minds. Navigator Sam Rodriguez felt every mistake he had ever made crash into his consciousness at once. Every time he had been wrong, every time he had failed, every time he had disappointed someone. The guilt was overwhelming, but Sam had learned something in the last attack. The guilt and fear were real, but they were also making him think clearer. His hands moved over his controls with perfect precision, calculating trajectories and distances better than he ever had before. "Captain," Sam called out, his voice steady despite the terror in his mind. "I've got perfect targeting solutions on all enemy ships. My calculations have never been this accurate." Dan Parker was hearing voices again, but this time he was ready for them. The voices of his dead family members were calling to him, begging him to give up and join them. But Dan had work to do. "Captain, I'm picking up the Devourers' communication signals," Dan reported. "They're coordinating their attack, but they're also confused. They keep saying that we're impossible and wrong." Elder Kethver watched the humans work with growing amazement. The Zephyrian leader had seen dozens of species face the Devourers over his long life. Every one of them had been destroyed. But these humans were getting stronger as the attack continued. "How are they doing this?" he asked Dr. Bennett. Lisa was working at her station, analyzing the Devourer energy signatures, even as terrible images filled her mind. "Evolution," she said. "Humans evolved on a world full of predators. We learned to use fear as a survival tool. The more afraid we get, the better we fight." Commander Alex Hayes felt the guilt of his brother's death trying to crush his mind, but he had carried that guilt for years. He had learned to live with it, to use it to make himself a better person. The Devourers were making it stronger, but that just made him more determined. "All weapons ready, Captain," Alex reported. "But I want to try something different this time." "What do you have in mind?" Jake asked. "What if we don't just shoot at them? What if we ram them? Get right up close where they can't run away." Jake smiled grimly. The fear was making him think in ways he never had before. Normally, ramming an enemy ship was suicide. But these weren't normal enemies. "Do it," Jake ordered. "Sam, take us right into the middle of their formation." The horizon accelerated toward the Devourer ships. The shadow vessels tried to scatter, but they weren't used to prey that attacked them directly. Their movements were clumsy and confused. In the engine room, Katie Walsh was pushing their systems beyond all safety limits. The fear was still there, making her remember every engine failure she had ever seen. But it was also making her work with incredible focus. Her hands moved over the controls like she was playing a musical instrument. "Captain, we're going faster than we've ever gone before," Katie reported. "The engines are holding together, but just barely." Dr. Bennett made another important discovery. "Captain, when we get close to the Devourers, their fear response gets stronger. They're not just afraid of us. They're terrified. They don't know how to handle being the ones who are hunted. The horizon smashed through the Devourer formation. The shadow ships tried to use their reality-bending powers, but the humans were too close. The Devourer's weapons worked best at a distance, when they could hide in the spaces between dimensions. "Fire everything," Jake ordered. The horizon's weapons lit up space. Energy beams shot out in all directions, hitting Devourer ships at point-blank range. The shadow vessels started to break apart, their forms becoming less solid, but the most devastating attack came from Dan Parker. The radio officer had figured out how to use the Devourer's own communication system against them. "Captain, I'm broadcasting on their frequency," Dan reported. "I'm sending them something they've never heard before." "What are you sending?" Jake asked. "Human laughter," Dan said with a grin. "I recorded our crew laughing during the last attack. The Devourers don't understand laughter at all. To them, it's the most terrifying sound in the universe." The effect was immediate. The Devourer ships began to shake and flicker. Their psychic attacks became weaker. Some of the shadow vessels simply disappeared, retreating to whatever dimension they came from. Elder Kethver was watching everything with his large eyes wide with shock. "They're actually winning," he whispered. "The humans are making the Devourers run away." The remaining Devourer ships tried to regroup, but the humans weren't finished. Jake had learned something important about these ancient predators. "They're bullies," he said to his crew. "They've been picking on species that couldn't fight back for millions of years. They don't know how to handle a real fight." Commander Alex Hayes targeted the largest Devourer ship. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from that one. I think it's their leader." "Take it out," Jake ordered. The Horizon's main weapons fired at the command ship. The energy beam hit the shadow vessel directly, and something amazing happened. The ship didn't just break apart, it screamed. The scream came not through the radio, but directly into everyone's minds. It was the sound of a predator that had become prey for the first time in its existence. The sound of something that had never known fear suddenly drowning in terror. The other Devourer ships immediately retreated. They disappeared into the spaces between dimensions, abandoning their wounded leader. "They're running," Sam reported with disbelief. "All of them. They're actually running away." The damaged Devourer command ship tried to follow its companions, but the Horizon's weapons had hurt it too badly. It flickered between dimensions, half in normal space and half somewhere else. Dr. Bennett was studying the energy readings from the wounded ship. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. The Devourer ship is sending out a signal. It's like a distress call." "What's it saying?" Jake asked. Lisa worked to translate the alien transmission. "It's warning the other Devourers about us. It's telling them that humans are dangerous. It's saying that humans are the first species that gets stronger when afraid." Dan Parker was monitoring all the radio frequencies. "Captain, I'm picking up responses from other Devourer groups across the galaxy. They're all getting the same message. Avoid humans at all costs." Elder Kethver approached Captain Morrison with tears in his large eyes. "You have done something that was thought impossible. You have made the Devourers afraid. In 300 years of running from them, we never thought we would see this day." Jake looked at his crew. They were all still shaking from the fear the Devourers had forced into their minds. But they were also smiling. They had faced something that had never been defeated, and they had won. "It's not over yet," Jake said. "There are more Devourers out there, and now they know we're dangerous. They'll be planning their revenge." Katie Walsh came up from the engine room, her clothes covered in oil and sweat. "Captain, I don't think they'll be coming back anytime soon. I monitored their retreat. They're scared of us now, really scared." Dr. Bennett had been thinking about what had happened. "Captain, I think I understand why we were able to fight them. The Devourers have been apex predators for millions of years. They've never had to evolve defenses against fear, because they were always the ones causing it. But humans evolved differently, she continued. We evolved on a world where we were both predators and prey. We learned to use fear as a tool for survival. When the Devourers made us afraid, they just made us more dangerous. Jake nodded. And now they know it. The question is, what do we do next? The answer came from Elder Kethfer. We spread the word, he said through the translator. We tell every species in the galaxy that the Devourers can be defeated. We teach them what humans have learned about using fear instead of being controlled by it. Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about all the species that had been destroyed by the Devourers over the millions of years. For the first time, there was hope that the reign of terror might be ending. All rig? 6 months after the first battle with the Devourers, the UES Horizon had become the most famous ship in the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge, reading reports from all over known space. The news was better than anyone had dared to hope. Captain, Dr. Lisa Bennett said as she entered the bridge with her latest research. I've got the final analysis of why we were able to defeat the Devourers. You're going to want to hear this. Jake looked up from his reports. In the past 6 months, Lisa had become the galaxy's leading expert on Devourer psychology. Her research was being studied by scientists on hundreds of worlds. What did you find? Jake asked. Lisa sat down and opened her computer. It all comes down to evolution, Captain. Every species in the galaxy that the Devourers destroyed had one thing in common. When they evolved, they developed fear responses that made them run away or hide when faced with overwhelming danger. She showed him pictures of different alien species on her screen. The Zephyrians evolved from herd animals. When faced with predators, they ran as a group. The Axelar evolved from animals that hid in burrows. The Centauri evolved from tree-dwelling creatures that climbed high to escape danger. Jake studied the pictures, but humans evolved differently. Exactly, Lisa said. Humans evolved from persistence hunters. We didn't survive by running away or hiding. We survived by running toward danger and facing it head-on. Our brains developed to use fear as fuel for fighting, not for running. Navigator Sam Rodriguez had been listening to the conversation. So when the Devourers made us afraid, they actually made us more dangerous? That's right, Lisa said. The Devourers had been successful for millions of years because they used fear as a weapon. But they had never encountered a species that could turn fear into strength. When they attacked us, they were actually powering up our fighting abilities. Elder Kethver, who had remained with the human crew as an advisor, spoke up. Dr. Bennett, does this mean other species can learn to fight like humans? Lisa smiled. We're already proving they can. The training programs we've set up are working. We've taught 12 different species how to use their fear responses the way humans do naturally. Over the past 6 months, the Horizon had been traveling to different star systems, teaching other species how to fight the Devourers. The results had been amazing. Chief Engineer Katie Walsh came onto the bridge with a big smile on her face. Captain, I just got a message from the Rigel system. The Altarians successfully fought off a Devourer attack using the techniques we taught them. 3 Devourer ships retreated after only 10 minutes of fighting. Jake felt proud of what they had accomplished. How many species have we trained now? 15 different civilizations, Commander Alex Hayes reported. And the word is spreading. Species are teaching other species. The knowledge is growing faster than we ever expected. Don. Parker looked up from his radio station. Captain, I'm getting reports from all over the galaxy. Devourer attacks are down by 70% in the last 3 months. The ones that do happen are much shorter than before. Dr. Bennett continued her explanation. The key is understanding. what fear really is for humans. Most species see fear as a warning to escape, but humans learn to see fear as information about danger that needs to be faced. She brought up more data on her computer. When a human gets afraid, several things happen. First, time seems to slow down, allowing for better decision-making. Second, physical strength increases due to adrenaline. Third, focus becomes laser-sharp on the source of danger. Fourth, creative problem-solving abilities actually improve. Elder Kethver shook his head in amazement. For 300 years, my people ran from the Devourers. We never imagined that fear could be used as a weapon. The Devourers didn't imagine it either, Jake said. That's why they were so easy to defeat, once we figured out their weakness. Dr. Bennett nodded. The Devourers had become overconfident. They had been apex predators for so long that they never developed defenses against fear themselves. When we turned the tables on them, they had no idea how to cope. A message came through on the main communication system. It was from Admiral Sarah Martinez at Earth Command. Captain Morrison, the Admiral's voice said, "Congratulations on your continued success. I'm calling to inform you that the Earth Alliance has officially established the Human Defense Training Corps. We're sending ships to every inhabited system to teach our fear-fighting techniques." Jake felt a sense of satisfaction. The fight against the Devourers was no longer just the responsibility of one ship and one crew. "There's more news," the Admiral continued. "Our long-range sensors have detected something interesting. Devourer activity in the Outer Rim has almost completely stopped. It appears they're avoiding any system where humans have been present." Katie Walsh laughed. "So we've got them scared to come near us?" "It looks that way," Dr. Bennett said. "But we need to be careful. The Devourers are ancient and intelligent. They might be planning something new." Sam Rodriguez had been monitoring deep space communications. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange signals from the Galactic Core. It sounds like the Devourers are communicating with something else out there. Something big." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of something?" "I'm not sure," Sam said. "But the signals are coming from a region of space where no one has ever been before. And whatever's out there, it's much bigger than the Devourers." Dr. Bennett looked worried. "Captain, what if the Devourers aren't the top of the food chain? What if there's something even worse out there?" Before Jake could answer, Elder Kethver spoke up. "There are legends among the oldest species in the galaxy. Stories about the old ones who came before the Devourers. But these are just myths. No one has ever seen proof they exist." Dan Parker adjusted his equipment to get a clearer signal. "Captain, I'm getting clearer readings on those transmissions. The Devourers are definitely talking to something in the Galactic Core, and whatever it is, it's responding." Jake made a decision. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we've discovered. If there's something worse than the Devourers out there, humanity needs to know about it. Dr. Bennett was still studying her research. "Captain, I understand why humans were the first species to defeat the Devourers. It's not just about using fear as fuel. It's about something deeper." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Humans have always been survivors," Lisa explained. "Throughout your history, you've faced extinction events, ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. Each time, instead of giving up, you adapted and became stronger. You learned that the worst situations often bring out the best in human nature." Katie Walsh nodded. "My grandmother used to say that diamonds are made under pressure. Maybe humans are the same way." "That's exactly right," Dr. Bennett said. "The Devourers made the mistake of thinking that making humans afraid would break them. Instead, they created the conditions where humans become most dangerous." Elder Kethver spoke thoughtfully. "Perhaps this is why humans were meant to reach the stars. Perhaps you were always destined to be the species that would end the Devourer's reign of terror." Alex Hayes had been quiet during the conversation, but now he spoke up. The question is, what do we do if there really is something worse than the Devourers out there? Jake stood up and looked out at the stars. We do what humans have always done. We face it head on. We learn how to fight it. And we teach everyone else how to fight it too. Dr. Bennett finished her report. Captain, I want to add something to the official record. The trait that makes humans special isn't just their ability to use fear as fuel. It's their refusal to accept that any enemy is unbeatable. Humans look at impossible odds and see them as a challenge to overcome. Katie Walsh grinned. In other words, we're too stubborn to know when we're supposed to give up. Exactly, Dr. Bennett said. And that stubbornness just saved the galaxy. As the Horizon continued its journey through space, reports kept coming in from all over the galaxy. Species that had been hiding from the Devourers for centuries were now fighting back and winning. The Age of Terror was ending, replaced by an Age of Hope. But in the depths of space, near the galactic core, something ancient was stirring. The Devourers had served their purpose, but they were just the beginning. The real test of humanity's courage was yet to come. Jake Morrison looked at his crew, the brave men and women who had changed the course of galactic history. Whatever was waiting for them in the darkness between the stars, he knew they would face it together. After all, that's what humans did. They turned toward danger instead of away from it. They used fear as fuel instead of letting it control them. And they never, ever gave up. The Devourers had learned this lesson the hard way. Soon, whatever else was lurking in the galaxy would learn it too. The hunt was far from over. But now, for the first time in millions of years, the monsters were. The ones being hunted, and the hunters were just getting started.